When you've lived long enough to watch the same trick get tried twice, you stop being surprised. You just start being prepared. I'm 63 years old. I raised my granddaughter Celeste from the time she was 4. Right after her mother, my daughter Yvonne, passed from a brain aneurysm that none of us saw coming. No warning. No goodbye. Just a Tuesday morning phone call that split my life into before and after. I packed up the guest room, moved Celeste's little pink suitcase into it, and told myself I was going to do right by her if it was the last thing I did. And I did. I worked. I saved. I made decisions that weren't always comfortable but were always intentional. When my husband Raymond passed in 2019, he left me the house in Decatur, the rental property in Stone Mountain, and a life insurance payout that, combined with what I'd built on my own over 30 years of nursing, came to just over $1.4 million. Not generational wealth by some people's standards. Though for a Black woman from rural Georgia who started with nothing, it was everything. It was proof that Raymond and I had done something right. It was Celeste's future. I never told a soul outside of my attorney and my accountant. Not my sister. Not my pastor. Nobody. Celeste knew there was money. She knew we were comfortable. But I never gave her numbers, and I never let her get careless with that knowledge. I'd seen too many families torn apart by the exact kind of people who smile at your face while doing the math in their head. She met Dominic at 31. He was fine, I'll give him that. Polite when he needed to be. Charming when he was trying, and attentive to Celeste in those early months in a way that made her light up like she hadn't since she was a little girl. I watched him carefully. I always watch carefully. And what I saw wasn't a bad man exactly. What I saw was a weak one. A man who had never fully stepped out from under the shadow of his mother. His mother. Renata. Lord, where do I even begin with Renata? She was the kind of woman who walks into a room and immediately starts assessing what she can get from it. Small smile. Quick eyes. She shook my hand at that first dinner and said, "Celeste talks about you so much. You two must be very close." And something in the way she said close, like it was a problem to be solved, told me everything I needed to know. I didn't say anything to Celeste right away. I want you to understand that. I wasn't sitting on information waiting for the perfect dramatic moment. I was watching and waiting and praying I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. 6 months before the wedding, I started having conversations with Celeste. Not about Renata specifically. Not at first. I started with the kind of financial wisdom I wished someone had set me down with at her age. We talked about keeping accounts separate, about not co-signing anything without reading every line, about how inheritance in Georgia is considered separate property and cannot be divided in a divorce. But only if it stays separate, only if it's never commingled with marital assets. I told her about a woman I'd known in my nursing days who lost her mother's house because she'd added her husband's name to the deed 3 months after the wedding, thinking it was romantic. Thought it meant trust. Found out later it meant exposure. Celeste listened. She's smart, always has been. But she was in love, and when you're in love, warnings sound like worry, and worry sounds like the older generation being overcautious. "Grandma," she said one evening, stirring her tea at my kitchen table, "Dominic isn't like that." "I know you believe that," I said. "I'm not talking about Dominic." She looked at me. "I'm talking about who Dominic listens to." She didn't push back after that. She just got quiet in the way she gets when something lands. But she's not ready to say so out loud. 4 months before the wedding, I called my attorney, a woman named Beverly who I've trusted for 15 years. I asked her to help me establish a formal trust, a revocable living trust, that would hold the house, the rental property, and the bulk of my liquid assets. Celeste was named as the sole beneficiary. The trust included a spendthrift provision, which means that even after she inherited, creditors and, more importantly, estranged spouses could not directly access those assets. Beverly explained everything twice and made sure I understood every word before I signed. I also had Beverly draft a letter, notarized, outlining that any financial gifts I made to Celeste during my lifetime were gifts solely to her as an individual, not to the marital estate. We kept it on file. I didn't tell Celeste all of this, not because I was keeping secrets from her, but because I wanted her to get married without carrying the weight of her grandmother's contingency plans on her wedding day. I told her the important parts: keep your accounts separate, don't add his name to anything I've given you, and if anyone ever puts a document in front of you and tells you to sign it quickly, you call me first. She looked at me like I was being dramatic. 2 days before the wedding, I sat her down one more time. The rehearsal dinner was the following evening. She was glowing, genuinely happy, and I almost didn't say anything. Almost. "Baby," I said, "I need you to hear me on something. Not as a worrier. As a woman who has been around long enough to know things." She sat down. "Don't tell Renata what I have. Don't tell Dominic either. Not the specifics. I love you and I want this marriage to work, but some information protects you better when it stays quiet." She nodded. "You've said this before. I'm saying it again because I mean it. Grandma." She took my hands. "I haven't told them anything. I promise." I believed her. What I didn't know, what neither of us knew, was that Renata had already been asking questions of her own. The wedding was beautiful. Celeste wore a gown that had a long lace train, and she cried a little walking down the aisle, which made me cry, which I will deny forever. Dominic cried too, which I'll admit surprised me. I sat in the front pew, and I watched my granddaughter get married, and I let myself feel every bit of joy in that moment without apology. And then 36 hours later, my phone rang. It was a Sunday. I was at home still in my robe. Second cup of coffee, watching the morning news. Celeste's name lit up my screen and I answered it on the first ring because something in my chest already knew. "Grandma." Her voice was tight, controlled but barely. "Renata is here." "Here where? Your apartment?" "Yes. She came with a man. She says he's a notary." I set down my coffee. "She has a document," Celeste continued. "She's saying it's a family trust transfer, that since I'm part of the family now, the right thing to do is consolidate assets for estate planning purposes. She made it sound like something you do when you get married. She said Dominic already signed his portion. Is Dominic there?" A pause. "Yes." "Is he telling you to sign it?" Another pause. Longer this time. "He's saying it's just a formality." I put down my coffee cup on the table slowly. I picked up my purse. I found my keys. "Celeste," I said, "do not touch that pen. I don't care what she says. I don't care what he says. You do not pick up that pen." "She's getting a little pushy, Grandma. She keeps saying it's standard practice. Standard practice." I was already walking to my car. "Baby, listen to me. Nothing about a notary showing up at a newlywed's apartment the day after a wedding is standard anything. You tell her your attorney needs to review it first. We don't have a... Tell her anyway. You tell her that your grandmother's attorney handles all documentation related to your estate, and that nothing gets signed until she reviews it. Can you say that?" Silence on the line. Then, yes. "Say it to her right now while I'm on the phone." I heard Celeste pull the phone slightly from her ear. I heard her voice shift, steadier, cleaner. "I appreciate you bringing this, but my grandmother's attorney handles all of my estate documentation. Nothing gets signed until she's reviewed it." I heard Renata's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard the tone. Smooth, dismissive. The kind of voice that's practiced at making you feel like the unreasonable one. "Tell her I'm on my way," I said. I got to Celeste's apartment in 22 minutes. I know, because I watched the clock on the dashboard the whole drive over, the way I used to time contractions in the delivery room. Steadily, calmly, without letting the urgency become panic. Renata was sitting on Celeste's couch like it was her living room. The notary, a young man who looked uncomfortable, was standing near the kitchen counter with a leather portfolio. Dominic was by the window, arms crossed, not quite making eye contact with anyone. I said good morning to everyone. I said it the same way I say it to a patient who's just told me something concerning, warm, even, giving nothing away. Renata smiled. "Iris, I know what you were just doing," I said. I sat down in the armchair across from her. "May I see the document?" She hesitated for just a moment, just long enough for me to notice, and then handed it over. I read it slowly, all of it. Every paragraph, every clause, every footnote. Renata made small talk. The notary shifted his weight. Dominic stared at the floor. It was a general power of attorney, drafted broadly enough to give the holder access to financial accounts, property transfers, and estate decisions. It named Renata as the agent. It was presented as a family coordination document. It was the most aggressively named piece of paper I had ever seen in 63 years. I set it on the coffee table face down. "Dominic," I said. He finally looked up. "Did you actually read what you signed?" His jaw moved. He didn't answer. "Because what this document does," I continued, "is give your mother legal authority over your wife's financial decisions. That's not estate planning. That's not a formality. I need you to understand what you put your name on." Renata's composure slipped, just slightly. "Iris, this is a misunderstanding. This is standard." "Beverly," I said. Celeste looked at me. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Beverly picked up on the second ring because I had called her from the parking lot and told her to expect me. "Beverly, I'm at my granddaughter's apartment. I have a general power of attorney in front of me, presented by her mother-in-law 24 hours after the wedding. The agent named is the mother-in-law. I need you to walk me through exactly what this document authorizes." Beverly walked through it. I put the phone on speaker. I watched Renata's face while Beverly spoke in her clear, measured attorney voice, the same voice she uses in court, explaining, paragraph by paragraph, exactly what the document permitted the agent to do. Access joint accounts, authorize property transfers, make decisions on behalf of the principal during any period of incapacitation or absence. The young notary closed his leather portfolio. When Beverly finished, I said, "Thank you. One more thing. Can you confirm for me that any financial gifts made to Celeste in my lifetime are documented as belonging to her individual estate, not the marital estate, and are protected under the trust instrument we established?" "All documented and on file," Beverly said. "As of 4 months ago." I hung up. The room was very quiet. Renata stood up. Her voice had changed. It had lost that smoothness, and what was underneath wasn't anger exactly. It was the particular frustration of a plan that has just publicly failed. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said again, but she was already reaching for the document. "Leave it," I said. "Beverly may need it." Renata looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked at Dominic. Then she picked up her handbag and walked toward the door. The notary followed without a word. At the door, she turned back. Just once. "Celeste," she said, "I hope this isn't how our relationship starts." Celeste looked at me. Then she looked at her mother-in-law. "I hope so too," she said, "but that was your choice to make, not mine." The door closed. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Dominic sat down on the couch and put his face in his hands, and I genuinely could not tell if he was ashamed or just caught. I let him sit with it for a moment. Then I said, "Dominic, you need to decide something." He looked up. "Not today. Not right now. But soon." I kept my voice even. I wasn't unkind. I also wasn't soft. "You need to decide who you are in this marriage, because your wife deserves a partner, not a co-signer for your mother's plans." He didn't say anything, but he nodded. Slowly, like it cost him something. I turned to Celeste. She had her arms crossed, not in anger, in self-containment. Like she was holding herself together and doing a pretty good job of it. "You okay?" I asked. She exhaled. A long, slow breath. "I will be. I know." I picked up my purse. "You always are. I want to tell you that Dominic became a different man overnight. I want to tell you that Renata sent a letter of apology and that everything settled into something peaceful. That's not what happened. Life rarely wraps up that cleanly. But what I will tell you is that Celeste didn't sign anything. The trust is intact. The rental property in Stone Mountain is still in Celeste's name alone, exactly as it should be. And the last time I spoke with Beverly, she said the documents are airtight. Dominic and Celeste are still married. They're in counseling, which was Celeste's condition for staying, and she told me he's actually showing up to it. Whether that becomes something real remains to be seen. What I know is that my granddaughter is not financially vulnerable, and she knows how to hold her ground. And she called me before she picked up that pen. That last part matters more than people realize. The inheritance, the trust, the legal documents, all of that was me doing what I could from the outside. But Celeste calling me before she signed anything? That was years of conversation paying off. That was every kitchen table talk, every let me tell you about a woman I knew. Every morning she rolled her eyes a little but stayed in the chair and listened. That was her knowing, somewhere underneath the love and the excitement and the beautiful dress and the lace train, that when something felt wrong, she had someone to call. I think about Yvonne sometimes, about what she would have wanted for her daughter. I think she would have wanted Celeste to be loved well, yes. But more than that, I think she would have wanted her to be protected, to know her own worth before anyone else tried to put a number on it. I raised Celeste to know that what you build quietly, you protect quietly. Wealth is not a performance. It's not something you announce to prove you've arrived. It's something you tend like a garden, carefully, consistently, and with full understanding that not everyone who admires your flowers has good intentions. Renata knew something was there. She didn't know what. She never found out. And as long as I'm breathing, that's exactly how I intend to keep it. My name is Iris. I am 63 years old. I raised my granddaughter alone, and I would do it again without a second thought. And if you ever find yourself sitting across from someone holding a document they want you to sign quickly, before you've read it, before you've thought about it, before you've called the one person in your life who loves you without an agenda, I want you to remember something. Slow is safe, quiet is protected, and the most powerful thing a woman can say at any age, in any room, is simply, "My attorney will need to review that first." I've been thinking a lot about what Renata must have believed when she walked into that apartment. She believed that a new bride, flushed with happiness and still in the glow of her wedding weekend, would not question a piece of paper put in front of her by her husband's mother. She believed that the speed of the ask, the notary, the clipboard, the phrase, "just a formality," would be enough to bypass whatever instinct might otherwise slow things down. She had done the math on Celeste's emotions and decided that love, newness, and the desire to make a good impression on her new family would be stronger than caution. She wasn't wrong about the math. She was wrong about the preparation. That's what I keep coming back to. Renata's plan wasn't stupid. It was actually quite calculated. What defeated it wasn't luck, and it wasn't drama. It was years of quiet conversation at a kitchen table. It was Celeste having heard, enough times and in enough different ways, that slow is safe and rushed is suspicious. It was her knowing, in the moment when it mattered, that she had someone to call before she picked up that pen. There's something I've come to understand about how choices compound over time, not in any mystical sense, just practically. The way that one decision shapes the next, and the next one shapes the one after that. Renata spent years, I suspect, making choices that prioritized what she could take from situations rather than what she could build in them. And those choices built a woman who walked into her son's marriage with a legal document instead of goodwill. Every action she took was logical within the world she had constructed for herself, but the world she had constructed was small and grasping, and eventually it ran directly into something it couldn't maneuver around. Celeste made different choices. She chose to listen even when she thought I was being overcautious. She chose to call me before she acted. She chose, in that apartment with her brand new husband watching and her mother-in-law applying pressure, to say the words I had given her and hold the line. Those weren't small choices. They were the kind that define who a person is when the comfortable version of events falls away and you're left with just yourself and a decision. And Dominic. I think about him too. I think about what it costs a man to watch his mother do something like that and not find his voice until the damage is already visible. That's not cruelty, necessarily. That's what happens when you spend your whole life choosing the path of least resistance with the people who raised you. It becomes your default. It becomes who you are in the moments that ask you to be more. I hope the counseling reaches something real in him. I hope Celeste gets the partner she deserves. But that's his work to do. And I have learned, slowly, at some personal cost, that you cannot do another person's growing for them. What I know is this. Integrity is not a single dramatic gesture. It's the accumulation of smaller ones. Every time you slow down when someone tells you to rush. Every time you ask a question when the room expects compliance. Every time you call the person who loves you without an agenda before you make a move you can't undo. Wisdom isn't something you're born with. It's what you're left with after you pay attention long enough. And resilience isn't the absence of fear or pressure. It's continuing to act from your values even when everything around you is designed to make you forget what those values are. Celeste didn't sign that paper. That's the whole story, and it's enough.